Well, there's a new development tonight in the Coco Pelli's brawl case. Troy police say that the FBI will not be investigating actions by police on the night that officers clashed with police back in January. The rumble, which began in the Troy nightclub and spilled out onto the street.
Over 3 decades, the West Australian newspaper ran 521 stories about one man, Troy Mercanti. The first hit the press in 1993 when he got charged after a nightclub fight in Bunbury. That was just the beginning. This isn't your typical outlaw tale. We're talking about a guy so feared that a rival gang member literally set himself on fire rather than face him. Yeah, you read that right. Troy Mercanti isn't just some biker, he's a force of nature. His name rumbles through Perth's underworld like a summer storm. He's been stabbed, beaten, shot, and even had his house bombed. And somehow, he's still walking around with a grin on his face. In 2008, the Coffin Cheaters kicked him out of their club in brutal fashion, tricked him into coming to a goat farm, then gave him the kind of beating that most wouldn't walk away from. Not long before that, the Comancheros wanted him dead after a fiery showdown with their boss, Mick Hawi. And if that wasn't enough, a decade earlier, the Club Deroes also had him on their hit list, all because he backed Kevin Mad Mick Woodhouse. A few years after that, the rebels bombed his house over a pub fight down south. Still think the biker life is all about leather jackets and loud engines? Think again. This is a world where loyalty is life or death, where brotherhood means taking a bullet and not asking questions, and where one wrong move can end everything. 6 years behind bars? Didn't break him. 15 Coffin Cheaters? Couldn't stop him. Cops and task forces? Couldn't pin him down. The man's been in the headlines and on TV for 30 years. And still, no one really knows what makes him tick. Ever wonder why someone chooses a life where getting beat up is a good day? Where cops trail your every move? Where every ride could be your last? Let's rewind to 1968, Perth. Back then it was a rough and wide open city, full of wild energy. That's where Troy Mercanti was born. He grew up in the outer suburbs, not exactly the kind of place that turns out legends. But even as a kid, he stood out. Some say he craved power, respect, control. Others reckon he was just a boy who'd seen too much, chasing a way to steer his own life in a world that didn't offer much direction. So, what turns a regular Perth kid into one of the most infamous names in Aussie biker history? It didn't happen overnight. It took grit, blood, and a thirst for more than what normal life could offer. That first headline in '93 was just the spark. After that nightclub brawl in Bunbury, he was off. By his mid-20s, he'd found his tribe with the Coffin Cheaters. These weren't weekend warriors. This was the real deal. And Troy, he didn't just join, he thrived. But he never wanted to be just another patch in the crowd. He had bigger plans. He didn't want the average 9-to-5 life, the house in the suburbs, the quiet weekends. He wanted more, a chosen family, a brotherhood that fought together, bled together, and sometimes died together. By the mid-90s, his name was spreading. Every fight, every arrest, every headline just added to the legend. The Coffin Cheaters weren't just a club. They were movers and shakers in a world most people only see in police docs or the evening news. But even then, it was just the beginning. Who could have guessed that the kid throwing punches in Bunbury would go on to change the whole face of Australia's outlaw biker scene? But back in those early days, Troy Mercanti was just starting to get a feel for the iron rules that would shape his life. Want to know how an ordinary Perth kid ended up one of Australia's most feared bikers? Buckle up, mate. This is where the real story kicks off. The late 90s brought serious change. The kind of change that separates the part-timers from the ride-or-die types. And Troy, he was proving himself every single day. Ever been to the geisha bar in Northbridge back then? It wasn't just another spot to grab a beer. It was a proving ground. A place where names were made and broken. By 1997, Troy's name was growing faster than a Harley with the throttle wide open. Rising through the ranks of a crew like the Coffin Cheaters. You don't do that by playing it safe. Every step up is earned the hard way, with blood, sweat, and blind loyalty. The club demanded everything. Troy gave it all. Fistfights on the street turned into full-blown tactical brawls. Bar scraps started to feel more like military ops. In January 2005, a clash with the Scorpion Boys at Metro City nightclub left Troy sliced up and bleeding. But get this, his rival, Nabil the Beast Diab, walked away with 5 bullets in him. This life doesn't hand out wins for free. By 2007, Troy's name was ringing out across Perth's criminal scene. Another violent incident at the Geisha bar left a 26-year-old with a busted jaw and added more fuel to Troy's growing legend. Cops were all over him. Every move watched, every phone call, every pub visit documented. The heat was turning up. He ended up behind bars for that nightclub assault, and while doing time, he picked up an extra 12 months for refusing to talk to the Australian Crime Commission. They wanted answers about missing cash. Trust money meant for the daughters of 2 murdered bikers from his old club. Troy wasn't talking. He's done 2 solid stretches in jail, the kind of time that would break most blokes. That infamous Geisha bar punch-up happened at 5 a.m. He knocked the guy out cold. That's the kind of street clout that makes even the toughest think twice. By the mid-2000s, Troy Mercanti had it all. Status, fear, respect. But here's the thing about power. The higher you rise, the bigger the target on your back. In February 2008, the hammer dropped. A group of about 15 Coffin Cheaters, his own club, turned on him. They ambushed him and beat him so badly he ended up in hospital. That was the warning shot. Something was shifting. The club was still solid, but Troy? He had different ideas. He wanted more, the kind of more that makes even your mates nervous. By that same year, the whispers started. Those heavy whispers that make old allies grab their guns and new enemies start planning their next move. In the outlaw world, change isn't about switching jerseys. It's war, and then it happened. The year everything flipped. Troy Mercanti walked away from the Coffin Cheaters. Not just walked, he made a power move. He helped launch the WA chapter of the Finks. A brand new gang right in the cheaters' backyard. One guy, one decision. 1,000 ripples. Quitting your club isn't like changing jobs. It's more like throwing a lit match on a fuel tank. And Perth, it went up in flames. Tensions hit boiling point in 2010. Picture this, the Kwinana Motorplex, full of bikers from both sides. The Finks versus the Coffin Cheaters, that day ended in blood. One of the worst shootouts Perth had ever seen. The headlines weren't exaggerating. It was chaos, pure bloody chaos. Police raided the Coffin Cheaters' Bayswater clubhouse, hunting for a handgun linked to the brutal showdown at the Kwinana Motorplex. The organized crime squad rolled into the Rally Road compound, hoping to find the weapon used in that violent clash just weeks earlier. One man had been shot. Another had 3 fingers hacked off. It was a mess, and the cops knew it could explode again. Officially, they were after the gun from the brawl, but with tensions sky high between the Finks, Coffin Cheaters, and Club Deroes, police weren't taking chances. They searched the place top to bottom, looking for any weapons that might be stashed away. They didn't find any guns, but they did walk off with a few balaclavas and some machetes. One gang member was hit with charges over a separate firearms offense. Meanwhile, more properties got raided as police tried to stop another street war from breaking out. The fight at Kwinana? It went down in the pit area during a Harley drag racing event. From what the police could piece together, the 2 groups ran into each other. Something sparked, and then fists, knives, and bullets followed. No warning, just chaos. And by this point, it wasn't just about colors or club patches anymore. It was personal. Former brothers, now sworn enemies. Every ride could be a trap, every old mate a potential threat. That's the toll of ambition in this world. The Finks, under Mercanti's lead, weren't just a side crew anymore. They were a real power, loud, growing, and impossible to ignore. Things were shifting, alliances were crumbling. Perth's whole biker underworld was being reshaped, one brutal move at a time. But here's what the headlines didn't tell you. Building a gang like that isn't just about fists and firepower. It takes smarts, timing, strategy. Troy wasn't just throwing punches, he was playing chess. And the cops? They were watching, not just lurking in the shadows. They were building a case, keeping tabs. Every meeting, every beef, every deal went into a growing file with Mercanti's name stamped on it. Still, the Finks kept growing. By 2012, Troy Mercanti was more than just a name. He was a brand, Perth's most well-known crime figure. The media ate it up. But the truth? They only knew half the story. Because it takes more than muscle to turn a new club into a threat big enough to shake the old guard. It takes vision, and Troy had plenty of that. But storms were coming. The kind that don't just rattle cages. They flip the whole damn system. And in 2013, the sky cracked open. Prison cells have a way of humbling people. But when Troy Mercanti landed behind bars that year, he didn't crumble, he calculated. He'd just been sentenced to nearly 7 years. The charge? A long, horrific pattern of domestic violence. The judge didn't hold back, calling him a coward and tearing strips off him in court. It shocked even people who thought they'd seen it all. That chapter was dark, ugly, unforgivable, and it changed everything. On the inside, the usual street games and club politics get stripped away. But real influence? That doesn't disappear so easily. Even from behind bars, Troy still had pull. Word on the street was he was still calling shots. Deals made, moves planned. The Finks machine kept running. That's what separates the foot soldiers from the top dogs, staying powerful even when you're locked down. The years ticked by. 2014, 2015, 2016. Outside, Perth's biker scene kept shifting. New names popped up, old grudges got settled. But Troy, he adapted, he waited, he planned. While most men shrink in prison, some use the time to build, to forge new alliances, to get ready. By 2019, the whispers started up again, the kind of talk that spreads fast in the streets. Troy Mercanti was coming home, and Perth, it was holding its breath. But this wasn't the same Troy Mercanti who went in. Prison doesn't just take your freedom, it forges you. It hardens the rough edges and sharpens the mind. If you want to know a man's real power, don't watch him when he's on top. Watch what happens when he's taken off the board. The strong ones, their shadows never leave. After nearly 7 years behind bars, Troy Mercanti walked out into a world that had changed, but not enough to forget him. At 51, he was older, sharper, and still just as dangerous. The first year back, that was all about re-establishing himself, rebuilding connections, taking stock of the new order. New faces, old beefs. But the code? That was still the same. Respect, fear, and silence. By 2020, the whispers were back. Not just street talk. These were the kind of murmurs that make cops flinch and underworld figures sit up straight. Mercanti wasn't just back. He was evolving. The Mongols rolled into WA, and it wasn't long before Troy was tight with their top brass. The club had deep American roots, born from Vietnam, vets turned outlaws, men rejected by the country they fought for. Sound familiar? Troy linked up with Mongol boss LeBrook, tight as brothers, and word was they were rebuilding something big. Mongols forever, forever Mongols. But for Mercanti, the patch was just the latest chapter. He'd worn the Finks, he'd bled for the Cheaters, he didn't join clubs, he defined them. But now, just being Troy Mercanti was basically illegal. Picture this. He walks into the Karanyup Glades Tavern on a Sunday afternoon. Sober, alone, just wanting to sip a coffee and read the Sunday Times. No colors, no attitude, just existing. Police were already there. They stopped him at the door and handed him a dispersal notice. No threats, no charges, not even under anti-association laws. He was banned just for being him. Section 115 of the Liquor Control Act, 1988. That's the clause they used. A legal gray area that lets cops bar someone just because. And that's exactly what they did. Illegal to wear colors? Sure. Illegal to drink with known bikers? Yeah. But illegal just to exist? Welcome to 2024. He tried to adapt. But the game had changed. Every camera was a cop. Every text could be evidence. Still, Troy moved through the new world like a veteran fighter. Cautious, calculating. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about staying 10 steps ahead. But trouble still found him. He got charged for wearing club insignia. You know what he was doing at the time? Picking up dry cleaning for his 80-something-year-old mom. Then came the real storm. April 2024. Breaking news hit hard. Troy Mercanti, once again in the spotlight, but this time for something darker. Police raided his mother's carrying home. Not just any squad. Gang crime, unmarked cars, cordoned off streets, the works. The charges? 2 counts of sexual penetration without consent. 1 count of aggravated sexual penetration. 1 count of common assault. He was arrested, driven away, held behind bars. Then another blow. A second alleged victim came forward. The headlines screamed and the streets buzzed. Not even Troy's legend could silence this kind of noise. And according to the police, more charges might still be coming. Through it all, Mercanti stayed silent, stoic, iron-willed. The streets buzzed, the headlines screamed, but Troy Mercanti kept his dignity, kept his code. Then, just days ago, something changed. A magistrate saw no reason to keep him behind bars. And just like that, Troy Mercanti, 56 years old, battle-worn but unbroken, walked free once again. The court heard how the night began, a midweek outing at Metro City with notorious Northbridge identity John Keyes on, and another woman. That's where he met the alleged victim. She left with him, back to his carrying home. But what happened next triggered a firestorm of accusations. Police allege that between noon and 1 p.m. the next day, he made an unwanted advance. But Mercanti denied everything. His lawyer stood firm. The court ordered strict bail conditions, a $100,000 undertaking. Troy Mercanti was back out, but under the microscope. And then, in a dramatic twist, all charges were dropped. The alleged victim withdrew her complaint, reportedly out of fear for her safety. 6 minutes. That's all it took in court. No conviction, no trial. The judge not only threw out the charges, but awarded Mercanti $1,500 in legal costs. 1 week earlier, he was being dragged from his mother's home in cuffs. Now, he was free again. In a world where most outlaws burn out or fade fast, he's still here. Through war and peace, through cages and courtrooms, through blood, brotherhood, and betrayal, Troy Mercanti remains standing. And that's the thing about legends. It's not about the patch, not about the Harley, not even about the headlines. It's about what you survive, what you carry, and what you refuse to let break you. What comes next? Well, only Troy can tell us, or not.